Alrighty, well, good morning, everybody. I had the pleasure to do my internship with the Human Resources Department here at Concord under Dan Fitzpatrick, Mitzi Klein, and Nora High. And just a quick roadmap of where I'm going with this is I'm going to speak about what the Human Resourcing Department actually does, why it's important, what I actually did, what I learned, and how I can use what I've learned after I graduate. So what does Human Resourcing actually do? They're in charge of recruiting, hiring, and retaining employees after they're hired to to decrease turnover ratios. Also, they're in charge of enrolling employees into certain benefits such as life insurance, health insurance, and even retirement. They also have to maintain active and inactive personnel files, even 50 years after they either retire or terminate. So they have to manage the leave time for every single employee individually as they're submitted, so that can pile up after a while. And they have to maintain grievance files against the university or vice versa, like against the employer. So why is it important? And human resourcing stresses the importance of human capital. And basically this is very important because they're in charge of making sure the employer's happy, they have a certain amount of pride for their company, and ultimately their turnover can be one of the most expensive parts of a business, so they want to limit that. So speaking of expenses, they also develop and manage budgets for the university as well as for certain departments. And they ensure competitive wages are being paid throughout the state here they just do Concord, but HR departments in general, they make sure the competitive wages everywhere are being paid. And then going back to the grievance part, they negotiate conflicts and find ways to resolve certain issues against the employer or against the employees. And what I did, I was very fortunate. I was able to do a very wide array of certain jobs and tasks throughout the office. But one main thing that I was able to do this semester was help organize the job descriptions for the Higher Education Policy Council, or the HEPC. And so what I did with that was I was able to create one job description for every job. So maybe a custodian is going to be the same grade and same type of experience as over at Marshall, over at WVU, Shepherd, across the entire state of West Virginia. And ultimately this is going to reduce the number of job descriptions from a little over 10,000 to fewer than 200. So this is greatly going to just decrease records and make it easier to manage for the state of West Virginia. Along with this, it's going to create a more competitive competitive wages for individuals. So like I said, they're going to be paid the same from here, over at Marshall, Shepherd, all that kind of good stuff. And also, the wage payment system needed to be updated. The last time it was updated was in 2001. So that's a pretty good time without being updated, and especially with the economy changing and all that kind of good stuff. I was able to do obviously other miscellaneous tasks, such as making employee packets for new hires, going to get the mail, restocking the supply closets and all that kind of thing, all those things. And those were, all those were pretty eye-opening, because you realize that the supply closet, all the folders, everything you run through, they don't just magically appear in the supply closet. Yeah, someone actually has to go get those things, and that was me this semester. So what I learned, a shorter question might be, what didn't I learn? They did teach me so much here, and I was able to learn the kind of the ins and outs of the business world, of a business office, and what it takes to actually run that office. So I understood what human resourcing does. And I was able to really stress the importance of staying updated and keeping your records organized, alphabetically and or by the earliest date, so you don't lose the very, very sensitive or personal informations and important records that the human resourcing usually handles. Also, Concord is changing into a new system called Oasis, and if anyone works with that, it's a nightmare. It's a headache for everybody here, and so really it taught me to make sure that when you're running a business, pick a software that is going to fit the company the best. Oasis, I mean, not kind of dogging them, but it's not been the best for Concord, and so really it taught me to look at the software before you either buy it or before it's implemented. I know Concord didn't really have a choice for this. Everyone in the state of West Virginia had to implement this, but it's just become a nightmare for everybody. I was also trained on Concord's position management system, so I was really able to see kind of how Concord is run from the inside out. So when they go and post a job, or a job opens up, they post, or the HR department sends an advertisement out to a company, and then it's advertised across the internet, and people looking for jobs, it shows up, and then they are going to go ahead and apply for this job or send in or respond to the advertisements. And really just I was able to see how jobs are filled and just really how Concord works. So that was pretty cool to see all that. And how I can use what I've learned, I did touch on this on other slides, but really got to see the daily functions of an office and just how it's going to be run. And I was trained on common software such as People Admin, West Virginia Oasis, CU Connect, which is where I uploaded those job descriptions to, and then they're going to go ahead and send them back to every, you could see every school in West Virginia, every higher education school in West Virginia, and you could see how all the descriptions are the exact same for, maybe a custodian is the exact same thing. Also, I got to learn Epics, which is how we clock in and how we ultimately get paid, so that's pretty important. And learning all these functions, I think, will just give me a competitive advantage over someone who hasn't had these opportunities to do this type of internship, and really just, I guess, put me ahead of the next guy, which is really what it's about nowadays. And lastly, I just wanted to do a quick thank you to the Human Resourcing Department, Dan Fitzpatrick, Mitzi Klein, and Nora High. They've truly made this experience a blessing, and they've taught me more than I ever imagined that I would learn here, and or at least in the internship, not at Concord. But and they really did teach me the importance of having pride for your company. They may ask me to go water a plant or something like that, and not anything having to do with what I'm actually there to do. But I would carry out that task to the best of my ability, and just because I have so much respect for everybody, everyone up there. And really it just taught me, when you're looking for a job out there, look for someone who you trust, you can respect, and you want to work for. Because ultimately that's just going to make getting up and going to work every day that much easier. So thank you.
So I actually did my internship with my employer, but I will get to that in a minute. I want to start off with just a general overview about what I'm going to touch on. I want to touch on some general company information, my particular job responsibilities during this time, what I hope to learn, what I did learn, and why I think it's good for people to actually do an internship. So I decided it was a bit more appropriate, based on what I do and where I work, to start with who I work for as opposed to where I work. And I actually work for a family. It's called Jim is the father, and his two sons, Rusty and Adam. They all have a part in what's done at the business. And I haven't included any job titles in this slide because they don't have any one specific title, and that'll become apparent in a moment. So where I did my internship officially is a company called Melrose Enterprises. It's in Princeton, and it was started in 1982 by Mr. Honeycutt of the Honeycutt Stadium, where the Rays play, if I have that correct. And I've been working for them for almost 4 years now, and I was able to do my internship through them, which I was really, really appreciative of Dr. Eminent letting me do that. And they're the reason I'm here, like I said, because the goal is for me to eventually take over for the CFO. But I need an accounting degree to be able to do the things that she does, so hence the reason I am here. The main purpose of this company is to acquire other companies, and they are all car care service companies. They're all underneath Melrose, but Melrose kind of operates and manages these companies. You have Superlube is a full-service oil change, and then Robo and City Auto are obviously car wash fully. They're automated and self-serve, so depending on your preferences, you can work there. For this particular set of companies, Jim is actually the president, his son Rusty is the vice president, and then Adam is the treasurer. So that's their titles for official titles for these companies. But then we have some other companies. We start off, we have Main Street Builders. It's a construction company which is owned by Adam and Rusty, and their title is members because they are partners, 50-50 in the company. We have another company, 1531 Realty. It's a partnership, and with this company, it's a commercial rental real estate have property in Huntington, West Virginia. And that Melrose is actually the partner in this company, not any of the individuals. We have South Walker Company. It's again commercial rental real estate, and Jim is the president of this company as well. Walnut Hill is owned by Adam and Rusty and a couple of their cousins. It's commercial rental real estate, and it actually has some property up near the courthouse in Princeton. Precision Consulting is an engineering firm, and it's Adam and Rusty and the engineer are all partners in it, so again the title is member. They each own a third of the company. We have Longview Property as a farm. Adam and Rusty again are members. Cloverleaf Properties, residential and commercial rental real estate. So if you're looking for an apartment, we probably have a place for you. Again, Adam and Rusty are the members of this company. And we finish up with Eastern Door and Glass. It's a garage door, storefront, window installation and sales company. This was actually the most recent company they've started in 2011, I believe. And Adam and Rusty again own this company, so they are members. In all, we have 12 companies that we deal with on any day. You can have problems with all of them, you could have a good day, but there's 12 companies in all that we actually deal with. So for my job responsibilities, I started off with office responsibilities. I split it up into two different categories of responsibilities. My official title is administrative assistant because I sort of wear a bunch of hats, and it was suggested that I should bring a bunch of hats with all the titles and wear them, but that was too many hats, so I didn't do that. So you can see it's just general office, answering phones, managing customers, the mails. I'm also a notary, so I can notarize documents, witness signatures, accept deliveries, delivering payments and other things, and pretty much anything that's asked of me. That could be running an errand or pulling out 2 years worth of utility bills and making copies if there's an issue, anything like that. And I encountered some of that during my internship where I had to do various things for anybody, and with 3 bosses, 2 managers, and a CFO, you can do a lot of running around. This accounting group is typically where I spend most of my time, just because of the number of companies, the number of bills and invoices and vendors we have to deal with. So most of my time is actually spent in processing payables, and that's grown a lot recently. I do a lot of entering, reconciling, making sure we have everything, paying vendors, but I also work in receivables, entering in receipts that we get. I actually generate some invoices, some statements for customers, and reconciling their accounts. I do the bank reconciliations for the companies monthly, and any bank deposits that need to be made. And then weekly I process payroll for 2 of the companies, which gets to be quite tedious when you have two companies worth of payroll and occasionally a third company when the CFO is not there processing that too. So my learning objectives for the internship are really specific. Because I already work with them, I really wanted to dig into the minutiae of what happens, what the CFO does, and learn more about what happens after I've done my work. So I got really specific with my learning objectives. And I wanted to learn, first off, about the financial accounting through preparation and observation of financial statements every month, how she does that, what's involved. I also wanted to learn a bit more about managerial accounting because we do have two companies that actually have jobs over periods of time, so we have to do a WIP report, and I wanted to know more about that because I don't really understand that process, or I didn't at all. I also wanted to learn about sales tax, B&O tax, which is something all companies, if you do business, is subject to typically. My fourth objective was to broaden my understanding of the payroll process beyond what I do every week, because there's more involved in it than just processing it and paying people. So I wanted to know what goes on after that. And then finally, with all of that kind of incorporated into one, better understand the responsibilities of the chief financial officer, since that is, in theory, one day will be my responsibility. So my first objective, basically the accounting software we use already generates the statements, so we don't have to actually sit down and do the cash and the receivables and the whole thing for the balance sheet. It's already done. But what the CFO does, and what she taught me how to do, was to go through each financial statement, starting with the balance sheet, and go account by account, making sure that the right information is there, which can be very tedious because you need to make sure you didn't capitalize something that should have been expensed, which could really cause problems in your statements. And then once you've gone through all of that, you go to the profit and loss statement, which for us is just an income statement. And you do the same thing, except you make sure you didn't expense anything that needs to be capitalized. So you're just doing the opposite of what you had done before, making sure everything is right. And then finally, what she does for the companies is reviews a comparison profit and loss statement. Your income this time last year versus your current income now. And whether or not you're trending better or worse, and try and figure out why you might be doing better or worse. For the second objective, the WIP report, this was something I was really interested in learning because it's fairly important for our two companies. And what the WIP report is, the work in progress report, is prepared for jobs over 2 accounting periods. And for us, that's quarterly. We prepare, the two companies prepare quarterly financial statements for various authorities. And so if you have a job that was in the first quarter and the second quarter, you have to, because of the matching principle, match your revenues and expenses. So you need to make sure that you have been overbilled or underbilled. And the way you do that, and she and I actually sat down and she walked me through how to do a WIP report, which I didn't get to observe as she did it because of time and my job responsibilities, but we did sit down and go over what you have to do. And you have to make sure you have all the right information, or else you're going to get a bad number. So you have to know what your contract price was, what you've billed to date, the money you've gotten in to date, and your estimated and actual costs of the job, and you add and subtract all these numbers together, and it tells you whether or not you've overbilled or underbilled. And it tells you the percent complete. And then you make an adjusting journal entry, which this was one thing I didn't know. I didn't know what you did with the report once you did it. And you have to offset your sales based on your overbilling or your underbilling. And for our purposes, and for anyone's purposes, I believe, if you've underbilled, you have an asset, and it becomes an asset on your balance sheet. But if you've overbilled, you have unearned revenue, and it has to be a liability. And we actually have specific accounts that those go into. So this was really good because I'm one day going to have to do these reports, and I didn't quite understand how she generated this information, and this is what we do with it. But the key thing for this to know is it's just an estimate. You don't know the profitability of your job until it's done. So this is just sort of kind of a where you think you are at any given point in time, which is important to know if you're doing financial statements and need to match your expenses and revenues. For my third objective, the B&O tax calculation was far easier than I actually anticipated. The key thing to know is whether you did work within a city limit or out a city limit. Most of our companies do work in the city of Princeton, so they're all typically subject to B&O tax. But if you do work with Beckley, Bluefield, Hinton, any of those, you are subject to their B&O tax and you have to file a separate thing. So the key is to know, one, did you do work actually in the city limits or out of city limits? And two, you have to make sure you use the correct tax rate, which I also didn't know. Retail companies use a 0.5% rate, but contracting companies use a 1% rate. So we have one company who actually does two types of sales, and we have to actually separate out retail versus contracting and calculate a different price. But it was much easier than I anticipated, but you do have to do it for 12 companies. And that is done quarterly. And it's fairly simple. But sales tax is a whole other monster. It's very confusing when you're first learning it, and we actually still have the CFO and the managers who deal with it still struggle with this, because do you charge sales tax? Do you not charge sales tax? Is it capital improvements? Is it a new construction? You have to know all of these different things. So basically what we focused on was, when do you remit sales tax? Because the system has already generated whether or not sales tax has already been done. We just have to know when to remit it. But sales tax is remitted, and I did not know this, based on the type of sale at different intervals and based on the state where the sale actually took place in. So Virginia, which we do some work in, has different sales tax remittance intervals than West Virginia does. And we have companies that do work in both states, and it gets somewhat complicated. And I actually have retail sales or service sales, because we have some company who does both service, like the oil change does both retail and service. It's typically remitted monthly, but we have another company who does retail sales that remits quarterly. Then you have construction, which only has to remit annually in West Virginia. So you have to keep track of which company you're working in, what type of sale they're doing, and remit it at different intervals. And in Virginia, for our purposes, sales tax is remitted monthly. So the biggest thing I found with sales tax is just keeping track of what you're doing and remitting it when it's supposed to be remitted, because if you don't, they do come after you, which we thankfully have not had. The fourth objective for payroll reporting, we walked through how to file and pay the state income tax, your state unemployment, and your federal unemployment. And the income tax, kind of like sales tax, is slightly confusing and a little bit different. And the problem with that is again, reporting your income tax withholding depends on your state and your business. We actually have one company in West Virginia who files on a monthly basis and another one who files on a quarterly basis. And then when you get into Virginia, they actually are opposite. And the one that files monthly in Virginia now files quarterly, and vice versa. So you really have to keep on top of what you're doing. And I did not realize that, when I started this internship, that it really was that complicated. The numbers are generated for you, that's not a problem. But remembering when to do what gets to be the problem. Thankfully, state unemployment and federal unemployment, far simpler. File and remit quarterly. Just remember to do it and you'll be fine. And like I said, the balance is calculated by the system, so you just have to keep track of what you're doing. Another key thing is a lot of authorities are now moving towards electronic filing. You are required to file electronically, which is good and bad. It has ups and downs. So a lot of what we do, you just have to do it online. You don't have any lead time for filing paper reports. And the last thing, the CFO's responsibilities. I knew a lot of what she did. I worked very closely with her. She's been my mentor for the last 4 years. And so I knew some of what she does. She prepares the tax returns for all the companies. She does the personal tax returns. She does the monthly financials. She files various reports. And she keeps tabs on me and makes sure that I don't royally screw anything up, because there is potential for that. But I wanted to know what she thought was the most important thing she did, because that will one day, hopefully, fingers crossed, be my most important responsibility, and what was the most time-consuming. And for her, she said most important would probably be analyzing the financial positions of the companies and providing the owners with the financial advice they need to make decisions. Should we buy a rental property? Should we buy a new piece of equipment? Should we finance that piece of equipment? Is all things that she has to kind of give them the yay or nay for based on where the company is currently. But the most time-consuming thing is, and after observation and speaking with her, I can completely understand this, and going back through all the tax filings, keeping in compliance with your various authorities is the most time-consuming issue, especially with 12 different companies. We are subject to cities, states, the IRS, the DEP, you've got Department of Highways, any number of authorities you are subject to, and they can come in at any time and audit you, ask for your licenses, ask for all of your paperwork at any given time. And I've actually witnessed several audits and things that have happened. And you just have to jump through their hoops. And in any given day, you could be jumping through 4 or 5 hoops for these authorities. It just depends on what they want when they want it. So that's the most time-consuming thing. And this has been good for me to see what she does, when she does it, why she does it, because hopefully if things go well, it will one day be my job to do these things and to keep companies on track. So I was really glad to have this opportunity to sit down with her and say, okay, here's what I want to learn. How do you do this? Because I've had these questions in the past. So it was a glimpse into my future. So that leaves me with why I think you should do an internship. For me, real-world application was a big thing. You sit in the classroom and you hear about depreciation and the matching principle, but how does it work? What does it really mean? What does it really do? So it's good to see, at least for me, accounting specifically in action. But that would work for any of your field, management, marketing, finance, any of that. But also it helps solidify the concepts. Again, with like using depreciation, until you see how it works, it's sort of kind of an abstract concept. But once you see something working, especially for me, it helped solidify and made it easier to do well in classes. Another reason is networking. Now I did it with my employer, but if you do an internship and you use someone else, you do get connections, and if you do really well, maybe they'll hire you on, or they'll talk you up to somebody else, or do a letter of recommendation for you. But for me, I think one of the big things is learning from your mistakes, because you're going to make mistakes. I have, the CFO has. We readily admit you make mistakes, but if you can make some smaller ones, get them out of the way, kind of learn how things work, you can go in a bit more confident into your first real job, or if you come back and work at the same place, you sort of have an idea and you've learned from those early mistakes, which I think is a really helpful thing. So all in all, I thought this was a really great time for me to really dig in and learn a bit more and really get a better foundation for what I need to do in the future. Any questions? You're not asleep?
Thank you, Sarah. So I'm Kirsten, and I did my internship with Welch City Hall. It's located in McDowell County. And I did my internship in the accounting department, which is my major. But for me to kind of learn and know what to do with the accounting department, I had to learn everything. Some of my responsibilities included learning how to use the AccuFund software that they use. I had to monthly check the city budget to make sure that it's right. I had to make journal entries, and then I had to learn the revenues and expenses and that whole process. AccuFund is the accounting software the city uses. It connects all of the different departments together. It has accounts payable, accounts receivable, cash receipts, court fees, the general ledger, payroll, and utility billing. It's all in that one program, so we don't have to have all kinds of different programs to get everything done. And every month I had to run the reports, and some of them was like the balance sheet, the ledger report, trial balances, and the revenue and expense reports. The budget. It's big. It's a big job trying to get it all straightened out in the beginning, but we have an outside accountant who takes care of all that. And every month I had to check the budget before the city council meeting to make sure that we wasn't going over the budget. If we weren't going over the budget, then yeah, I could leave it alone until the next month. But if we were over the budget, if it was a small amount, then I had to make a budget adjustment, which is just in the accounting software, just make a little adjustment. But if it was a large amount, then I had to do a budget revision. I had to fill out a form, run it by council, get them to approve it, and then send it to the state where they approve it. And then we can change our budget figures. Every month I had to do journal entries. I had to check the monthly investment reports and whether it gained or lost. Then I had to make an entry to record that. And the monthly interest reports, I had to check them and make a journal entry to post the interest we gained. And then I had to adjust certain things because, like, we would go back and check and something somehow got off and we had to just change it to make it fit. The revenues and expenses. I had to learn about the revenues first because, your profits and everything. For the city, the revenues come from business and occupation tax, the business license, utility tax, traffic tickets, fines, and other grants. So whenever they come in, I learned how to post it in cash receipts and file it where it needs to go. And then after I got all the revenues down packed, I had to turn around and learn all the expenses. And it goes through accounts payable process, and it starts with a purchase order. For City Hall, we have a water department, a sewer department, a street department, and the police department. And they all need supplies and equipment and things purchased. But we take care of all that. So they call us whenever they need something at the store, and they get a PO number, and either we order it for them or they go to the store and pick it up. And whenever we get the invoice for whatever they needed, that's whenever we can pay it. But before we pay it, it has to be approved by the department supervisor. And once it's approved, then it comes back to the accounts payable and we pay it. And some of the expenses is like, automobile supplies or repairs, office supplies, utility expenses, and equipment. And then we have quite a few other accounts too. So overall, I really liked my internship. It was a lot of fun, and it was a good opportunity. And it ended up turning into a full-time position, which I'm really glad because I liked it. It has taught me that even though, like, I would be hired for the accounting department, there's other things and responsibilities that I have to do. Like, they wanted me to make a website for the city of Welch, so I had to figure that out on my own and make it, and it turned out pretty well, I think. And then other things, like if somebody's out, then you have to be able to handle what they do and kind of help out a little bit. Any questions?
Good morning. I'm Jennings Berry, and I did a management internship with Toyota Boshiku. Toyota Boshiku, the company overview. It's a daughter company of the Toyota Motor Corporation that makes all the Toyota vehicles. Toyota Boshiku manufactures all the interior components from seats, and that goes from raw materials all the way up to the seats that you sit in, airbags, carpet, and the door moldings. They have 128 facilities worldwide, and they have 15 manufacturing facilities and one central hub in North America. The history, Toyota Boshiku was founded May 15th of 1950. The founder of Toyota Boshiku, Saikichi Toyota, is actually the father of the founder of the Toyota Motor Manufacturing Company. So Toyota Boshiku came before Toyota Motor Manufacturing Company. Toyota Boshiku started out as a carpet company, just making carpet for homes and different things. And his son came to him and asked for a loan. He liked cars. He was in the garage all the time on a gearhead. So he got an $18,000 loan and started the Toyota Motor Corporation, and actually ended up bringing his father's company in under him as a daughter company. I worked in their Indiana facility. It's located in Princeton, Indiana. It's a 120,000 square foot facility. They have over 1,100 employees full-time and 500 temporary employees. They build the seat frames for the Sienna minivans, the Camry cars, and the Highlander SUV. They also make the foam pads and door moldings for these vehicles, but they only assemble the Sienna minivan seats. The overview of my internship, it was an 11-week internship, and I started on May 18th and finished July 31st. I worked in 4 different departments, spent 2 weeks in the first 3 weeks in the first 3 and 2 weeks in accounting. I worked in welding, and in welding I learned Toyota Production Systems fundamentals, which is what runs all of the Toyota Motor Corporation. I learned and understood and developed KPI, which is Key Production Indicators. I established daily production schedules while I was in welding. Next, I went on to assembly. I developed 2 new hire training packets for 2 of their new hires. I developed rotation schedules. I learned the fundamentals and how to apply balanced workload to meet customer takt time. I then moved to production control, and I learned the basics of production control, the Kanban system, the Toyota ordering system overview, and then I actually ran routes and delivered materials to the lines. In accounting, I learned how to pay out royalties and how you calculate those. Then I was actually responsible for digitizing their packing slips, which ended up being a really big job. TPS, this is a very, very basic overview of it. It is very extensive, and like I said, it runs the whole corporation. It's the system that all of Toyota, the corporation, uses, all of its daughter companies, and they also make their suppliers follow this. The main objective and purpose is to minimize waste, whether it be monetary, activity waste, or logistics. They follow many different steps in this, but the main ones I'm going to talk about are Kaizen, cost reduction, in-house supplying, and quality control. Kaizen is a Japanese philosophy of continuous improvement, which means even if they are meeting takt time and have very little defects, they are always looking to improve it. To do this, they encourage any employee, from the line workers all the way up to the president, to find problems and present how they can be fixed. They have to follow steps to do this, and different reports they have to fill out, which would be the activity report, and then a description of the route, and then a time study, and it goes further on into a Yamazumi to show all of these. While I was there, I took a 2-week TPS course, and in doing that, we split up into groups and actually had to go out to the lines and produce Kaizen. When we did that, I was on the TBK4 line, which produced the front seats for the Sienna minivan. We had to watch spots stations 17 through 21, which was the very last stations of welding the frames together. And they were running behind OA, they weren't doing very well, and we had to figure out what was wrong and try and come up with a way to fix that. In doing so, we had to go through the different reports, and this is an example of an activity report, which is the first thing you do. You go out and watch each station, and you fill out this form. This is the most general part, and you just point out what they do, and then you find the issues. You know, what if they're taking their time, if they look at the cell phone, something that's going wrong, and then you put in a countermeasure on how to fix that. After that, you do a time study, which goes more in depth, and we stood there with stopwatches and literally counted every second from when they picked up the raw materials till they were finished with the job. And it was every step that they took in that, whether it be walking, setting it in, whatever it was. Finally, you put together what is called a Yamazumi. In this, it just shows exactly what is going on from the beginning to the end, and it gives you really easy visual to see it. This is on Excel. What we did, we took the big post-it notes that you get from Staples, you know, about yay wide and tall, and we put them up and we cut out post-it notes. And the time study you do, that turns into the Yamazumi. Green is value added time. So when you're putting the parts into the jig or you're welding it and it's actually making money for the company, you put it in green. Yellow is something that doesn't add value, but it has to be done. So it would be walking to get the parts, or it would be other various things like that. Blue is walk time from the beginning to the end of the process. And red is something that is wasteful and doesn't need to be done. We want to cut down all of the red on a Yamazumi to get more green and blue and yellow. After that, I learned KPI, which is key production indicators. I actually had the task of going through and reproducing KPI boards, which were next to each line, so the managers could go through and see how their lines were running and what the problems were. Their indicators included absenteeism, which just measured how many absences there were, and they had a goal of no more than 2 people absent every day. Downtime, which is how long the line is actually not running and costing the company money. Operational availability, or OA. Scrap, that includes pieces and how much it costs the company. Defects, what's caught internally and what is sent out to the customer. Safety incidents, and PEF, which is process efficiency. To find OA, you divide actual production, which is how many seats you've actually produced, by what should be done according to customer takt time. To find PEF, you divide your value added time by your total lead time, which is how long it's actually taking you, or cycle time. And this is just a general KPI board, how it's set up. You have in the middle any of your countermeasures, so right here, anything that's wrong, what action is going to be taken, and then the status of it. Yellow is it's in process, green is it's finished, red is it hasn't started yet. You have your safety incidents over here, and just each KPI or indicator is presented on the board. And every morning they would have a meeting. The managers would go over, see where they were running, hitting OA or not hitting OA, and where they could approach and go straight to the problem and fix it. Then I had to produce a daily production schedule. And that is the customer, Toyota Motor Manufacturing of Indiana, which makes the Sienna minivan and Highlander, sent Toyota Boshiku how many seats they needed each day to produce how many minivans they needed. And the line had to run and meet that. If it didn't meet that, then they would have to run overtime on Saturdays, and that's what the production schedule is. And to do so, I would take what they demanded, subtract how many we actually built in the week, so the 5 days, and then divided that by the cycle time, how long it takes to run it. And that would let me come up with a schedule of how many hours which shift needed to work so we could meet what they demanded. Then I moved to the assembly department. And the first thing I had to do was make hire packets, which was training hire packets and just the general company code of conduct and things like that. The important thing I'm going to talk about is the training side of it. Toyota Boschke, Indiana's training goals was that every employee should be trained in 4 different stations. And they had to be fully trained in these stations. Full training meant that the employees could run a full rotation of 2 hours and maintain at least 95% operational availability with no defects in that. The training should take no longer than 2 weeks or 10 days, and each employee, so what I did to reach that, I had each of the employees train 2 full days under the current employee running that station. So at first they would just observe and see what they were doing, and then slowly work their way into it. And after the 4 different stations, that would leave them 2 days to actually run and test, see if they got it understand and had it down. This prevented overwhelming the new hires and keeping them from leaving, because if you get into a new job and you can't do it, you're going to feel like you're failing and you're going to leave. And it also worked them in with ease, so they didn't overwork their bodies first and anything like that. Then I had to make the rotation schedule, and all that is for is ergonomics. You can't have someone doing the same thing for 8 hours every day, or they're going to end up getting hurt. So they split their 8-hour days into 4 2-hour rotations. So the basis of that, the first rotation, say you're working your shoulders. The next rotation, you would want to relax your shoulders and work on a different muscle group. So I had to go through, and I started with observing each station, taking notes, learning what they did, what muscles were used, and studying that. Next, I had to learn which employees were actually trained on these stations, because I couldn't throw someone there who didn't know what they were doing. And then with that, I finally had to develop the schedule, and that looked like this. I know it's not easy to see on this, but up top, GL is group leader. They are over the whole line. TL is team leader, and they have certain cells. They split them up by 7 stations. And that team leader was responsible for those. If someone had to go to the bathroom or got hurt, they would fill that position. Here was the different positions for each line, and here were the rotations. And they had little pictures of each employee, and they would just stick it on here with magnets. And you would see, they would do this before every shift, so the employees knew where they were going and were ready for the day. And like I said, this cut down on injuries. It helped ergonomics, and it helped them be ready for the day and know what to expect. The last thing I did was understand balanced workload to meet customer takt time. Customer takt time is how long it should take you to make the seats, because they have to make the minivans. They have so many a day they have to do, so they have so long to do each minivan. Well, you should have the seats done and there in order for them to do so, and that's takt time. Balanced workload is what the name says. You split the entirety of making the seat as evenly as possible among each station. And doing that, that doesn't mean the work-wise, it means more time. So each station has a certain amount of time to get as much possible as done. By balancing the workload, the takt time was reached more easier and more often. This also allowed, if TBIN was down for 3 hours, Toyota Motor Manufacturing could run for 3 hours and still produce more vans. Because I didn't know this, and it's a crazy number. Every minute that our line was down, it costed Toyota Motor Manufacturing $23,000 for every minute we were down. So we couldn't be down very long. Next, I moved to production control, or PC. And they're responsible for making sure that the lines have the materials to run continuously and produce the seats at takt time. That entailed taking totes of just raw materials, pipes, rails, different things like that, and taking them to the stations at each line. With that, certain pieces got used more. You're going to use bolts more than you're going to use rails. So each station had to be visited its own amount of time. With that, Kanbans come in to help. An internal Kanban is a slip of paper that is used to keep inventory and also help the route runners keep the line stocked as needed. Here is a picture of the Kanbans that we actually used. In this corner, you have the number that you give it. AR is for a certain line, which happened to be the Sienna middle seat, because in the minivan there's three rows of seats. This was for the middle part, and this was a certain number. They would scan this, and when they scanned that, that automatically ordered that part. It ordered a tote of it. So it was, someone didn't have to continually just order and order and order and stay on a computer the whole time. They just scan it, and it did it automatically. Here it had a description of the part. It had who the supplier was that supplied us with that part, how many is in each tote. The Kanban cycle means one tote is used twice in a rotation, or twice an hour, not a rotation, and 6 pieces were actually used in an hour. So it told you how many you needed to bring to that station and how many times you should visit that station. Then I moved to the royalty project, and royalty is what is paid to the mother company. Toyota Boshiku America is owned by Toyota Boshiku Japan, and for that they are paid royalties, or it's not the same as dividends, but it's the same principle. Toyota Boshiku was paid 5% of the total sales of TBIN. So to find that, we had to subtract. We had to take our total sales and subtract what was already paid in royalties. So we would get parts from other Toyota Boshiku plants. Well, they are already paying the royalty for those parts, so we don't have to pay that. Which is right here, direct supply, or intercompany is what that would be. So we take the total sales, and then you subtract direct supply, which is what is brought from the suppliers, and they also pay Toyota Boshiku because they're owned by them, so we don't have to pay those royalties. You then go to the intercompany and subtract that, and then V&V is what is sent internationally. So Toyota Boshiku Japan would send us parts, and however many parts we used, multiplied by that. We would subtract all of this, and that would give us our net sales. You times that by 5%, and we had to pay them in 1 month. We paid Toyota Boshiku $28,000. I had to help come up with that and pay that out. Actually, I wrote the check and sent it, so that was kind of cool. Most money I've ever seen. The final thing I did was digitizing. The IRS can audit you for 7 years. They make you hold records for 7 years back. So with all the parts that were going in to one Camry front seat, I think there was 843 different components that went into one seat. So there's a lot of packing slips that came through. 7 years of that ended up equaling about 84 tons of paper that they had kept in a warehouse. My job was to turn 84 tons of paper into one database on a computer. That was really, really tough. To do that, I had to weigh in whether it was more efficient to hire someone new and have them scan back through 7 years of that paper, or have a company that's in Princeton, Indiana, do it for us and outsource it. To do so, I ended up finding that it was a lot cheaper just to let the company do it. And then from then on, we bought a scanner for the company, and had actually me doing this brought another part-time position on. So someone actually got a job out of me doing this project, which was really cool. And their job for the day was just to simply take the packing slips, scan them on this, and put it in the database. That was all they did, and it took about 6 hours a day. This sheet is what I actually presented to the plant president and manager. I had to present this to them, and it just shows, it weighs in on 2 different scanners that we thought would be best, and let them decide on which one it was, because it had to be approved by them. Step 1 was Phoenix Imaging, which was the company that ended up doing the 84 tons of paper. And then these were the 2 scanners we did, and their different specs. I had to present that and ended up doing so. And they, like I said, I added another job to that and helped the company economically. What I learned from all of this was a huge company like Toyota Motor Corporation, at the very base of what they do and why they're so successful, is really simple. It's something you wouldn't think of normally, but it's very simple, like the time study. Going that in detail about something so simple saves them millions of dollars every year. And that helps me learn that to manage a company, if you're simple about it and do what's common sense, you can go ahead. This helped a boy who took $18,000 and turned that company into what is Toyota now, which is a huge company throughout the world. I also learned while I was there and observing the different managers I worked under that you have to take care of your employees. One instance when I was there, the shipping line that actually put the seats into the tractor trailers and took them to Toyota actually went down. The plant president, who is really high up, he's the highest in the plant, the head dog there, actually came out in his suit and tie and was using a pallet jack to put seats into the tractor trailers, which showed me that he didn't see himself as a better. He just knew that the job had to get done and was out there helping his line employees do so. The simplicity comes back to cost reduction and to improve efficiency. And with Kaizen, it's continuous improvement. So no matter if they're meeting OA or not, they're always trying to improve. And that comes back, that tells me that they're not too prideful to think that they've got this down and they're great. To be a good manager and to run a company successfully, you always have to be looking to improve and be open-minded. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Just very quickly, you guys can see, of course, you don't have to go all the way to Princeton, Indiana, but he had, picking on what Sarah was saying earlier, Jennings had some networking contacts, I think through family that did that, and he actually did his internship during the summer, and Kirsten and Tyler and Sarah worked on theirs during the fall semester. So again, something to think about. You could get something, his was a full-time 40-hour-a-week job, he did it during the summer. They're working their hours around school and so forth, so it might be something you want to consider. And all 4 were paid internships, which pretty much, I think most internships are paid. And I encourage you, to look at that. I know several of you already talked about it.
Not floating or anything, but if anyone is interested in Toyota Boschku, I can give you contact information. And just a plus, I worked 11 weeks. In that 11 weeks, I made a little over 13 grand. So it's worth the while. I mean, it's worth it.
Get with his family and stay in Indiana. So there's some nice things out there. So anyway, thank you all for coming. We'll start these again next spring. Good luck on your finals and have a wonderful holiday. Thank you.